I'm pleased to welcome our moderator, Laserfiche Director of Government Strategy, Kimberly Samuelson, to the stage. Kimberly?
Yes. Everybody have fun last night? Yeah? Everybody want to join me in singing a song? No. I didn't think so. In design, the architecture of a building communicates the purpose of the building. In technology, the information architecture communicates the purpose of the enterprise or the business. So one could say that the architecture becomes the language of communication. Building an enterprise-wide content management system without a well-considered strategy and architecture is like building a house without blueprints. That would be silly. The architect, in this case, is working with metadata, documents, automations management, and business goals, as opposed to space, materials, plans, and focal points. So, if you'll indulge me a little further with this analogy, we'll start with our plans. In this case, our technology strategy. So, I think everyone has one of those, right? We'll consider how our systems will all work together and how they interrelate. We'll ground our enterprise in a firm foundation of enterprise content management, and it will be supported by a framework of good governance. The walls of our information enterprise will be composite applications, which are truly the example of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts, because we've nailed our enterprise content management system into our major line of business applications. Finally, we'll offer the roof as a shared service. The enterprise edifice is now complete. The purpose of this exercise was to allow us to visualize how organizations both define and build their enterprise. So now it's time to talk about a little real-life stuff. Joining me today are two amazing examples of Laserfiche enterprise users who are kind enough to talk to us today about how they define the E in ECM. So let's start off by welcoming Russell Kaurloto from the University of Southern California. And John Sifri from NFL's Houston Texans. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. Hope we're comfortable and we're enjoying the conference.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Russell, we'll start with you. Can you tell me a little bit about USC and enterprise content management?
Sure, I can go through it and talk about it in varying degrees. What I thought was interesting, though, I wanted to take a step back and watching all the award winners, there's a recurring theme that I saw across the board. When we started talking about enterprise, I saw integration, standardization, right, optimization, and all those things that basically then they level the playing field of being able to then manage, manage content management, right? So when we look at the E in enterprise, you have to take a step back and say, okay, what's that really mean? Well, at USC right now, we have multiple Laserfiche instances throughout the campus. And you have to think about what's the power in that content. I mean, I think what everyone in this room would agree upon, why we do what we do every single day, is how do we get access to that content? How do we leverage it? How do we make use of it? And use it in a way that empowers, or looking for business analytics, access to information instantaneously, whereas in the past, it was really rudimentary in how you actually made that happen. So as we're looking at this, to say, with all those instances, how do you bring that back into the fold to create like a shared services model? Because within the enterprise, you have to be able to have the ability to give each area its own autonomy to be able to continue to do what they do best every single day. But from a central perspective, or across the entire enterprise, leverage all of that content in one location or have access to it at any point in time. those are the differentiators that really empower an organization.
Yeah, it's almost a paradox. You have the central control and the local flexibility. Not to use that to death, but it's very true. How about you, John? Tell me a little bit about the Houston Texans and Laserfiche.
Okay, so from our perspective, the enterprise is the Houston Texans, the football team, and the McNair Group, the money. In relation to document management, we look at it more from the life cycle of a document as it goes through our organization. So this is initially from the when a document comes in, whether it's generated internally or an invoice being received. We want to take that document, apply the business logic to it that makes it go from a normal document into a record.
Because records management is really a process. It's
Correct.
not just a static.
Correct. And in our organization, we're a little smaller than USC, but a lot of our business logic is in the minds of users. So it's very inefficient. We're trying to, now we have several process systems in place like Laserfiche, and we're trying to pull that more into, make it electronic and more efficient.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's something called the results gap. And it's sort of the difference between what you think your process is and then what your process actually is. And I think as IT specialists and IT strategists, it's our job to sort of figure out how to bridge that gap and then deliver the necessary results. So, Russell, I'd like to hear a little bit more about USC in terms of enterprise and sort of, could you talk a little bit more about your shared services model or what you envision?
Well, there's a lot of multi-facets that go into it. And one thing I wanted to talk about as well was John and I were talking earlier. I'll get to it in a second. One of the things that really amazed me, and I'm a sports fan, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, Laserfiche and and the Texans, and how does that work? And then one thing he brought up, which is like kind of threw me back, the playbook.
Yeah, this is a great
Think
story.
about the playbook itself, and I'm going,
story.
wow, that really makes a lot of sense, and you don't think of it in those terms. So what he's really grappling with is no different than what we grapple with when we're talking about that content or that one document that really is really meaningful to general counsel. Think about what it does for the Texans, right? So I wanted to make sure we draw that correlation because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Incidentally, the playbook app went off like a lead balloon. The coaches do not want to part with their books, so we're looking at other solutions.
There you go, right? Generational. So. But when I get back to your point, what we look at more than anything else within that enterprise is that it's really multifaceted. Because how do you then, as we coined the phrase we were talking earlier, stray cats on steroids? How do you bring all those stray cats to the fold? How do you bring it so they can actually, generate the buy-in of where the value is in creating the enterprise? And you can imagine a university, if you take administration and then take your staff and then add that into your faculty who have tenure, things can get pretty interesting at times.
Well, faculty are pretty independently minded, yes?
Really?
Not telling you anything you don't know.
Read about it, therefore I am. Right? So the point, though, is that you really have to create governance. You have to have that governance model across all those different areas. Once you establish that governance and you communicate in transparent fashion what you're trying to achieve, what your goal is in hand, and then basically work at it from that enterprise to then say, if we pull together as a team and bring it back into the fold and create that vision of what that means long term, if you then gather them together and bring them into a fashion of where they understand it, guess what? If they leverage the opportunity in a much grander scale, there's cost efficiencies within it, there's ease of use that goes in it, and there's less overhead overall if you get to that enterprise level, and that's basically what we're embarking on.
Right, interesting. So, John, how did you bring sort of Laserfiche on board at the Houston Texans?
Initially, we brought Laserfiche in for a particular project. It was for our accounting system.
Which is pretty arduous, right? I mean, you've got
arduous.
AP processing, invoicing. I mean, everybody buys stuff, but nobody wants to deal with the paperwork, right?
Our mission statement in IT for a football team is really to create efficiencies. So we've been doing that for a number of years now. Prior to Laserfiche, we've had processes in place for purchase order and things like that that are more data-driven. It's easy to work with data, electronic forms and things like that. Very tough to deal with documents. In our small organization, we would need a little bit bigger development crew to do that. So we've always shied away from those kind of processes. But then we did the PO process, we linked it into Great Plains, our accounting system, and then there was that huge hole of the invoices. So we brought Laserfiche primarily for that use. And we had a reseller implement it for us. It was BMI Systems. Ramsey and Jeanette, you rock. So they put it all in place. They talked to our users. They defined the business process, and they got it implemented for us. Our process used to be very manual. All of our documents were paper. They'd be passed around, signed on the document itself.
And then email too, right?
Correct.
And what IT person likes email? None?
So now it's all electronic. All the approvals are electronic, and it's filed electronically, and there's retention policies to eliminate the document electronically. So that was a huge win. And the product is so simple to use that we were able to learn the lessons learned, and internally now we're able to deploy it to other uses. We use it for our medical records for the sports medicine folks. They used to keep binders of information on players, so anytime a player gets injured or they just evaluate a player, they put information into a book about them, but now it's all electronic.
And there's HIPAA requirements behind those types of records, right? So you've got to be really secure.
Absolutely. And no one in the organization, the accounting folks may have some visibility into player records, but not the other way around. So well, the user only sees what they need to see, and that's very powerful in our organization.
So you were saying in your pre-interview, because we do pre-interviews here, we're big time. In your pre-interview, you had a great quote about your background being from consulting, in particular business process management, and that if you could do workflows with data, why not with documents?
Correct.
And that was sort of a leap for your organization.
It's a huge leap. We from my prior experience, like I said, working with the data was where we were comfortable, and interfacing with other systems. We just never looked at it from a document perspective where the document would have the metadata tagged in an area where you can actually see it all together, and then link that information to another backend system like Great Plains to pull in other information, such as putting in the PO number and retrieving all the invoice information into the metadata. So that was very powerful.
So Russell, when we were speaking earlier, you were talking about the role of centralized IT within your organization, and that there are IT units that will bring on technologies, and it's sort of centralized IT mission to go out, evaluate, and then grow it if necessary. Can you talk a little bit about that and sort of how you came across Laserfiche and how that's happening?
Sure. We're a little bit different at the university. There's universities out there that are completely decentralized. There's universities that have complete central control. We're more in a federated model, of which then gives each department the ability to go out and do what they need to empower themselves from a technology standpoint that serves their needs. Then you take a look and then you say, okay, then if that's, allowing them to do that, is then to say what things are commoditized, of which then you want to be able to, offer across the board. And those things, usually from an infrastructure standpoint, as everybody knows, it's, it's your voice and data, security, those sort of things, identity management. Those are your commodity services. But then when you start to take a look at that, that middle tier in your application layer, is then to say, okay, how is it that we can drive cost efficiencies across the organization? Are there other departments out there or multiples that are doing things of which would be better than brought back to the fold? And that's not to say that central IT should actually manage or drive that. It could be another department that takes on that responsibility. But basically to bring it to the center. And as we looked out and looked at multiple things of which we've capitalized on, and I can talk a little bit about. But with Laserfiche, we noticed that there were multiple instances across the campus, and then to look at it from a workflow standpoint. The college, Marshall School of Business, I mean, it really covers the whole gamut. And small facets and large. I mean, and one of the issues, and I think those in large organizations are grappling with, the varying levels within Laserfiche. So you're now talking about somebody's running Rio and someone's maybe using a different version of it, and how do you level that playing field so everybody could leverage that top tier capability? And that's basically what we're looking to bring back into the fold in that shared services model. And to your point, what you were talking about with each person still has the ability to look at what they need to see and not no one else's. That's really one of the key things that in the end game, you want to make sure that each area still has the ability, no different than what they're doing today, but doesn't bleed and then impact any other organization as you bring it into the central, essentially.
What about change management? How do you manage change within your organization? Like I'm kind of throwing you on, John, that you probably weren't expecting. But I mean, when you implemented the AP processing, I'm assuming the business unit came to you and said, oh, I have this pain point. This is tough to do. How did you work with them to sort of go through the change of implementing, document management?
So originally, our legal department considered a record a printed copy.
Okay.
That was the original way that we looked at it. So we had mountains of information, paper, rooms full of information. So a couple months before we brought in Laserfiche, they acknowledged that an electronic document could be an official record. And then we started looking at the accounting process. They were the loudest. So we looked at them and started...
Squeaky wheel, right?
Correct. So we brought them in, implemented them first. And then, like I said, we started to run with... without the big picture in mind, we started to run with other business units. And then we soon realized that a lot of this information has relating metadata. Mm-hmm. So we had to stop. It's like, whoa, this is getting out of control. We were starting to see silos of information. So we took a step back. We tried to figure out a larger architecture for our environment. How would data, how are these different departments going to play into our overall structure? And now we're starting to go back towards that plan. So for change management, now we evaluate a new business unit coming on to Laserfiche. We talk to them and find out what types of data they're dealing with and then plug that into our organization. And then from there, create a design and then implement.
And that's the direction we're headed as well. We're not there today because you think about the size and scope of it to be able to get there. Each individual department does that, but then how do you bring that back to centers to be able to do the same thing? And also at an enterprise level to be able to then have something that serves the haves and have-nots. Because within multiple departments, you have those, or let's say, that I always use the analogy, the Marshall School of Business has a tremendous amount of money within their own department to be able to do those sort of things and really empower and do that, as opposed to, let's say, the School of Music. Right? So how do you level the playing field? And really the metadata is really key to this as well. To be able to then take that data, just think of it, and we know today, we don't even have to then dig that deep to find how many multiple entities are out there. And you think about it from the general counsel's perspective, they're going crazy thinking it's in not just one place for discovery, but it's in multiple.
That's a nightmare.
It really creates a serious situation for a campus environment when there's litigation involved.
Yeah, it's tough to sort of settle on, a couple things that you said that was interesting. First of all, the haves and the have-nots. I think that one of the things that you can use enterprise content management to do is sort of democratize information.
Absolutely.
So, everybody gets access to what they need to get access to, how and when they want to have access to it. How about devices? Are you guys seeing interest in, I want to use my iPad, I want to sign in from home, I want to use a portal? I mean, does that come up?
Absolutely. Sometimes the IT department drives the technology, and sometimes the business units start pushing you. So our scouting department is starting to want to use iPads for our draft books. Mm-hmm. So starting to use, we collect information on college players. They're coming into the draft system, how we pick our players every year. So they're wanting to interface with an iPad rather than, they were skipping the whole laptop thing and going right to the iPad.
Huh. It's because it's cool, right?
It's cool.
So it's interesting. So the draft books are at a lesser degree of security than the playbook, huh? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's odd. Well, yep. The playbooks are very big. They need to be searchable.
Yeah.
You're going through hundreds of different players to come up with the 7 best picks for your team. So it's really important how you catalog that data and how you search it.
Well, we were talking about it earlier as well. We're finding, and everyone in the room, I think, would agree, and I think you have to have your head in the sand not to realize everything is being device-driven. It's not so much that you're pushing an application out, the device is pushing the application, which is a whole huge dynamic change and what we've seen within, within the IT sphere for as far as for as many years I've been in there. So to your point, it's all across, they want access from any device they have at any point in time, wherever they're standing, which makes it pretty challenging.
Yeah, I think in the past 5 years, there's been a real shift with business IT in that instead of sort of being the know and the masters of the network, you're sort of turning to more of a service, and very much people want the consumer experience within their business place, and they want to be able to use their personal devices and the like. We heard a great story about a month back. We went out and did a road show, and one of the CIOs said, my users will ask for a Canon when they need a fly swatter. And I'm guilty of that. People who are laughing out there know me. Do you ever come across that when they're asking for sort of a big sort of enterprise thing, when maybe a small integration or a small solution would sort of fit the bill?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's one of the challenges, is that trying to dumb it down to the lowest common denominator, so you're not in that overkill, because when you get in an overkill stage, it will basically destroy any project you're trying to move forward with, because it turns into inertia. So that's where it comes back to the education aspects, the governance model, and understanding what the vision and goal is of what you're trying to achieve.
I agree. It's on a smaller scale. It's talking to the business unit and finding out what they really want to achieve, and then designing a process around what they want.
Yeah, it seems like from when we were talking about the Texans, you've really sort of integrated enterprise content management in on the business side, and the sports side, you're sort of slowly getting there.
Right.
Because the sports side is the more mature side of the organization. Would that be correct? Or maybe not technology mature, but sort of in existence mature?
Correct. I think both sides are partners in this endeavor. Where neither one's going to be successful without the other. Can you repeat the question one more time? I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. No, I was just asking about the mature. So what you're doing in terms of enterprise content management is really working to deliver on the business side first, because you see the need there, and then you're slowly working to sort of the sports side.
Well, the business side, is on the business side we have accounting, we have ticket sales, we have premium seating, sponsorships.
A lot of money there, huh?
A lot of money there.
Yeah.
So the pain point was with accounting and how long it took to actually process invoices and pay the vendors. So that was a major pain point.
Vendors want to be paid.
Exactly, yes they do. But on the football side, they're not any less important. The sports records, medical records are very important. When a player gets hurt, the legal department, there's cross-team work there. So players are evaluated, their records are cataloged. The legal department gets in from a workman's comp perspective. So there's lots of information back and forth. So we're trying to move forward evenly across the board.
Okay.
And contracts as well would be tied to that for each
Well,
individual
very
player,
high
right?
risk area. I mean, very high risk. I mean, some contracts auto-renew if you're not on top of it. So if you're not on top of your information lifecycle management, you could be locked into something for another year or whatever, but you don't necessarily want to engage in, so you lose that opportunity. We just have a few minutes left, so I wanted to finish up. What's the future hold for both of you? Russell, we can take you first in terms of enterprise content management. What are some of the things you're envisioning?
I think one of the things as a takeaway is that we're so ingrained in today's environment when it comes to content management is to think of the paper document. It's grown past that. It's now everything from the paper document on through to video.
Right.
And the video aspect is really what you need to be able to prepare for, and how you get that contextual aspects of it. We're doing a lot of studies around it. The Shoah Foundation in particular has done a tremendous amount of work in looking at the testimonials from Holocaust victims and that metadata to be able to search within a video and pull out and extract information at any point in time. And I think that's really what the vision is going forward, because I think we're moving from that static state into this really movable, real flexible world of video.
And you're
visual.
also redefining, I guess, what a document means too, and that's why it's gone from sort of document to content, because you're talking about video.
And that's why I call it content.
Right.
And go in that, because content means everything. It doesn't mean just one thing.
Right. What about you, John? What does the future hold?
So we use, just to your point about the video, that's something we already have in place. At least we're on the leading edge in that perspective. All of our scouting has a video metadata system already in place to be able to review particular plays, a particular player on a particular down. You can pull it up and buy metadata and then watch the video. For us, we'd like to grow into Laserfiche a little bit more, get more and more business units on board, and then also interface with other back-end systems. We have lots of data in the NFL, GSIS information. There's statistics about everything. So we'd like to get our player records into Laserfiche and interface with college systems and NFL systems as well.
That's interesting. So I think from our conversation today, we can determine some things. I think the definition of enterprise is very situational. Enterprise could mean shared services. Enterprise could mean 10 departments, using content management for information lifecycle management. But I think that defining the enterprise and being flexible enough to define the enterprise gives you the opportunity to sort of redesign the way your organizations do work. So with that being said, thank you very much for joining us today. Didn't they do a great job?